Yeah. Well, it's a new year. Hopefully there's a few other new things around here too. But if you were hoping for a new start for Marvel and the MCU, you are crying bitter tears this morning because, wow. I mean, I think anyone with half a brain knew Echo was going to be bad, but wow. This wasn't just bad, this was so bad it's actually kind of impressive. This doesn't happen by accident. You have to work hard to deliver something this awful. And I'm not saying it was worse than She-Hulk Attorney at Law, because She-Hulk was a very unique and special kind of awful, but in many ways, Echo is in that same class. Now, when I sat down to write this video and I was looking over my notes, I wasn't really sure where to start, because there's so much badness here. Where do you possibly begin? So before I even get to the show itself, I need to rewind a little bit and go back to the Hawkeye show where this all started. Now, I liked Hawkeye more than most people, even though I hated what they did with Kingpin, but if there was one part of that show that felt like it just flat out did not belong there, it was the Maya character. That entire plot felt super awkward, it didn't really fit in with anything else, it was obviously just shoehorned in there because they wanted to spin the character off into her own show. The problem is, they did a really bad job introducing her, and based on what I saw in Hawkeye, there was nothing to suggest that character needed or could even carry her own show. Maybe if she was more like she is in the comics, it might have been different, because Echo in the comics can be a fun character. But the creators of this show have been pretty open about how they think the comics are lame and weren't going to be following them, which is probably why the character sucks now. She's not likable, she's not interesting, and that never really changes. In Hawkeye, she's just an angry person who wants revenge, and in Echo, she's an angry person who wants revenge and has magic powers. Powers which are completely different from her powers in the comics, by the way, and are a whole lot stupider. In the comics, her powers are cool, but God forbid anything cool happen in this show, right? Instead, her new powers in the show are so stupid and ill-conceived and nonsensical, you have to wonder why the writers even bothered, because all they do is make the story worse. I'll get to it. Just about every aspect of this show feels either incompetently made or just plain half-assed. The writing is completely amateur. It's full of plot holes, there's tons of things that make no sense at all. It might seem like I say this a lot, but it reads like bad Tumblr fanfiction. And more than that, it's just poorly produced as a TV show. And nowhere does that stand out more than with the editing. I swear to God, the editing in this show is some of the worst I have seen in a major studio production. There are so many shockingly bad edits in this show. And here are a few examples I jotted down while I was watching just to give you an idea. Cutting to a different scene while a character is in mid-sentence. A character saying he's been watching something all night when it is clearly the middle of the day. Awkwardly cutting from nighttime to daytime and trying to make it look like the same shot. And an entire group of characters being very clearly naked one moment and in the next moment fully clothed. And I could go on. There's tons more examples like this. It's honestly jarring and distracting how awful the editing is. Your average content creator on YouTube could have done a better job. And it's so terribly done that it doesn't just affect how the show looks, it drags the story down too, because there are so many plot holes that result from this. Things the editor should have taken out but didn't, or things they should have kept in but didn't, because two things were very obvious watching this. One, the show was haphazardly cut down from a much longer version, and two, there were a ton of reshoots that didn't mesh with what they'd already shot very well at all, and this all created a huge mess that the editor was clearly just not equipped to handle. Now here are some examples of plot holes and how the story gets completely by the god-awful editing. And there's gonna be spoilers in here, but you should have watched this show anyway, so who cares? In episode 1, there's a subplot about Maya needing medical help for a gunshot wound, which she apparently got off-screen at some point. We never see how she got the gunshot wound, we never learn what it's in reference to, it has no bearing on the story at all, and it never even comes up again afterwards. So what was the point of it? Beats me. It was obviously part of some plot that got cut, but why they didn't cut these scenes too when they very easily could have half is anyone's guess. Also in episode 1 is the fight you saw in the trailers between Maya and Daredevil. And don't get excited about him, it's the one and only appearance he makes. Daredevil wins the fight, has Maya helpless and at his mercy. Now, moments earlier, he watched Maya murder a man with her bare hands. He knows Maya and her cronies are criminals, and with his hypersenses, there is no way that he didn't smell the kingpin on her. So here he has a golden opportunity to question her, to let her think she's escaped and then follow her so she can lead him back to Fisk or something. But instead, he just leaves. He just disappears for no reason, allowing this cold-blooded murderer, who he must know is connected to the Kingpin, to just walk away scot-free. And why? Because this entire Daredevil sequence was clearly added during reshoots because it stands out from the rest of the show like a sore thumb, in a desperate attempt to up the show's cool factor, and plot holes be damned, was never intended to tie into anything else. We never see or learn how Kingpin inexplicably survived getting shot through the eye at point-blank range by Maya at the end of the Hawkeye show. They couldn't be less interested in trying to bullshit their way out of that one. I thought you were dead. Nah, I'm fine. Oh. Okay. No need to explain that any further, I guess. Maya plants a bomb, blowing up one of Kingpin's warehouses, and afterward they somehow automatically know it was her who did it, even though there's literally no way they could know this because she did it in secret. Oh, and here's one that really fucking baffled me. Throughout the show, we keep seeing a particular swing set with a broken swing. Now, at some point in the production, there must have been something very significant about that swing set because they are constantly cutting to that fucking thing. Maya keeps staring at it intently like it means something really important. Every f***ing episode, they're cutting back to that goddamn thing. We never find out what it means. Because if there were scenes that explained this, the editor didn't include them. But they left all the other stuff with the swing set in, minus any context, of course, so now we have no idea what the f*** that's about. You could have cut all the shots of the swing set and lost absolutely f***ing nothing. But they didn't, and now it's just a bunch of time-wasting filler shit that does nothing but kill the pacing and confuse the f*** out of the audience. And speaking of pacing, oh my god, this show is so slow, you have no idea. It's 5 episodes long, and there is maybe 3 episodes worth of story here. After I finished episode 4, I was like, there's only one left and practically nothing has even happened yet. The entire narrative is Maya goes home to Kentucky, she plants a bomb on a train, Kingpin shows up, she makes him cry, the end. That's it. That's the whole show. They could have cut this entire thing down to 1 2-hour streaming movie, no problem. And not just because the pacing is slow, but because there's so much of it that means nothing and goes absolutely nowhere. There's a multi-episode story arc about a minor side character fixing a truck. I guess because the writers saw that fixing a boat subplot in Falcon Winter Soldier and thought it was so riveting, they just had to recreate it. And what makes this all so much more painful to sit through is that there is nothing elevating any of it. A lot of the time when you're watching a bad show or a bad movie, there might be at least something diverting about it. Like an actor who's better than the project deserves, or one character in particular who's kind of entertaining, like with Batwoman. The show was an utter train wreck, but at least Rachel Skarsten was fun to watch. Or Ms. Marvel. Yeah, the show sucked. The character was cringy as hell, but Aman Vellani was good in it. It wasn't her fault. Everything else was just unsalvageable. Echo doesn't even have something like that going for it. The supporting cast is fine. There's some good actors in there, but none of that even matters because the show is so focused on Maya, and there's no getting around this. Maya is just a bad protagonist. There is so little to her. She's terribly written, and that's messed up because with everything she's been through, you'd think this person would be really interesting, but she isn't. The deaf indigenous amputee thing checks a lot of boxes, which is no doubt the only reason why this shit show even exists. It makes her unique, but it doesn't make her interesting because they don't do anything with that stuff. All the deaf thing means is that the show has a lot of subtitles, and the writers do such a poor job fleshing her out and give her so little to work with that it's damn near impossible to even gauge her acting. Like, I could say her acting sucks, but that wouldn't be fair because the character is so flat, she barely gets a chance to do any acting. The Maya character only has one note to play, that note being surly and angry, and I swear to you, this is the God's honest truth. In 5 episodes, there are maybe 3 scenes where Maya breaks out a second facial expression. The whole rest of the show, no matter what scene she's in, no matter what's happening, it could be happy, sad, whatever, she's like this. That's the entire performance. And honestly, I don't think it's the actor. The performance is lifeless, but she does seem to be trying, and she does a good job with the action scenes. I think she was being directed to act this way. I think this was all by design. It's not the actor, it's the character. And sorry, not sorry, this character sucks. Her development, if you want to call it that, is way too clumsy for her to be interesting, and she's not likable at all. In fact, it's the complete opposite. Maya is an asshole. She blames everybody else for her problems. She treats her friends and family like garbage when all they want to do is help her. She uses them. One of them she gets to risk his life just so she can get her revenge on the Kingpin. Never thanks them for sticking their necks out or apologizes for any of this, by the way. And yet they still forgive her even though she does nothing to deserve it. And she's a giant f***ing hypocrite too. In one scene, she's having an argument with this guy whose name I could not remember for the life of me. He's some old family friend, I think. And she resents him for leaving her alone in New York after her dad moved the two of them there and then later the dad was killed. She makes him feel guilty for leaving her alone in New York, when in an earlier episode, we clearly saw that her friends back in Kentucky were reaching out to her because they didn't want her to have to go through all this shit alone, and told her as much, only for her to completely ghost them, which she continues to do after she comes home, by the way. She actively avoids the cousin who supposedly is like a sister to her. She only associates with anyone if they're useful to her and has no qualms about putting them in danger if it helps her get what she wants. And now she's trying to make this guy feel guilty because of stuff that was completely on her? Fuck you, you bitch! And you wonder why people like me thought Maya didn't need her own show? Maybe that's because Maya is a complete piece of shit as a human being. And it would be one thing if all this garbage was presented as some kind of character flaw, as trauma and emotional baggage, and Maya's arc was about her working to overcome all that, to defeat her demons and become a better person, but it's not. I think the writers thought it was, but this is why I say the writing is so awful, because nothing about her arc actually builds up to that. Other characters will occasionally point out that maybe the way Maya's acting is not the best way to go about things, but she never takes that to heart. She never even seems to feel bad about it, no matter how many of the people who still care about her she hurts in the process. And then, spoiler, at the 11th hour, after doing absolutely f***ing nothing to earn this, the ghost of Maya's mother randomly appears to her and plays one of the biggest Deus Ex Machina cards the MCU will ever see. And in this one 5-minute conversation, the writers tried to somehow resolve an entire season's worth of botched character development by having her mom go, "Maya, it's time for you to get over all of your personal bullshit. Here, I'll do it for you with magic. Abracadabra, boom, done. Congratulations, Maya, you're a better person now."
Bitch, please.
If you think I'm joking, go watch it for yourself. I am dead serious. Maya doesn't have to do any of the hard personal work to overcome her emotional baggage. She doesn't have to admit that she's made any mistakes or make any difficult personal breakthroughs about the way she's been acting or treating other people and resolve to do better and change her ways. She didn't have to actually do anything at all, because after being a flat, unlikable piece of crap for the entire season who had no interest in changing whatsoever, the ghost of her mother just appears out of thin air and fixes her character arc with magic. And this is what passes for professional screenwriting at Marvel Studios now. Just let that sink in for a minute. Now, supposedly, this is all meant to tie into the new Deus Ex Machina powers the writers gave Maya after retconning the much cooler Taskmaster-esque powers she has in the comics. And I call them Deus Ex Machina powers because that's literally what they are. The way they work now is that Maya is an echo of her ancestors. So whatever skills her ancestors had, she can use. That's what they say it is, but really it's just a bunch of bullshit, because there are no rules to these powers at all. There's no rhyme or reason to how they work, and they never explain what the powers can and can't do, because the writers want the powers to do basically anything. Seriously, if you think Maya's powers are really vague and undefined and nonsensical, that's on purpose. The writers wanted it that way because they're f***ing lazy, talentless hacks who wanted some catch-all excuse for the powers to do whatever the plot needs them to do. So So anytime Maya has her back against the wall, or she's in a tough spot, abracadabra, magic happens, and then just like that, she suddenly has the exact ability she needs to get out of it. No matter what ability she needs, she just instantly has it, no work or effort required. Because as long as the writers don't say what the powers can't do, then there are basically no limits to what they can do. But even that makes no f***ing sense, because apparently her ancestors were walking plot devices who could do absolutely anything. So because it's magic and we don't have to explain it, Maya has access to ferocity, strategy, cunning, and love, but also super strength, healing, communing with ghosts, power transference to other people, and some kind of telepathy? Are you f***ing kidding me? Which one of her ancestors had those f***ing powers? Because we never see that shit, and God knows they don't bother explaining it. They don't want to explain it, because if they did, then they'd have to say whether there's anything these powers can't do. And the powers need to be able to do everything just so the f***ing story can work. So yeah, they're Deus Ex Machina powers, because there are no rules, they can do anything the plot needs, and I do mean f***ing anything, and the writers just wanted to use them like a magic wand to get them out of any corner they happened to write the story into. And turns out there were an awful lot of those. Just wait till you see how Maya uses them on the Kingpin. It's one of the most embarrassing things in the history of the MCU. And speaking of embarrassing things, the finale. Holy shit. This entire thing was so absurd, so half-assed, so unintentionally hilarious, and the climax, oh my god, the climax. Imagine that scene from Avengers Endgame, you know the one, but several minutes longer, more stunning, more brave, even cringier if such a thing is possible, with an Indian theme and no budget. It is so unbelievably dumb. I felt embarrassed for Vincent D'Onofrio, that his character, who back in the Netflix days was the best villain in the MCU period, and yes, I will die on that f***ing hill, had to be the victim of this stupid, nonsensical, feminist activist garbage. He doesn't even get to put up a fight. They just whack him with the Deus Ex Machina stick, Kingpin folds like origami, and that's it. That's all there is. It's so insulting you'd think it was a f***ing parody, which is goddamn idiotic, because they had to know that Kingpin was one of only 2 reasons why anyone was even watching this shit show to begin with, Daredevil being the other one, because ain't nobody tuning in for Maya Lopez, I can tell you that. So that being the case, Kingpin being the much bigger, more important character here, given that he's about to be the big bad and co-lead of Marvel's upcoming Daredevil show, which is gonna have more eyeballs on it than Echo could ever dream of having, you'd think that someone at this f***ing studio would make sure that the writers treated him with a little respect, like the major, serious, dangerous threat he's supposed to be. Instead, Kingpin is basically reduced to a useless, whiny, crybaby simp. After Maya turns on him, nearly kills him, kills a number of his people, and cripples his operation with a bomb, he comes groveling back to her hat in hand and promises to give her whatever she wants, anything at all, if she'll just come home with him. So, he just has no dignity left at all, I guess. Let me tell you something, writers. If one of the main problems with your show is that the villain has no self-respect, you've done something wrong. And after she turns him down, he tries to strike back at her only for her to defeat him so pathetically easily, it's as if they were trying to ruin his character. It's as if they were trying to make it so that he could never be effective or threatening as a villain in any way ever again. And now the goddamn Kingpin of crime goes into Daredevil Born Again as a sniveling, defeated jackass, all thanks to a terribly written, horribly conceived C-list character who we'll probably never even see again after this show.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Kingpin will never be a menacing villain again after this. That menace is gone. He's not getting it back. They f***ing neutered him. He comes out of this looking like a scrub. I don't know how you fix this. I don't think you can fix it. And that probably goes for Marvel too. If they don't even have enough common sense to recognize who their money-making characters are and treat them accordingly, then what the hell are we even doing here? What's next, Marvel? Are you gonna have Magneto get humiliated by Squid Boy? Is Doctor Doom gonna get his ass handed to him by Snowflake in Safe Space? I mean, where does it f***ing end? Do you just want to continue putting out shit like this until you have no fans left at all? Because that's where you're headed. This show had 3 things going for it. Just 3. Daredevil, wasted with one quick quick token appearance just so they could put him in the trailer and trick people into watching. Kingpin, character completely ruined and only there so the writers could show how little respect they have for him, and surprisingly, a serious tone. For once, Marvel's trademark silly, shitty, god-awful comedy was completely absent, and oh my lord was that refreshing. They were showing blood, playing things straight, not making a joke out of everything, and it was glorious. Unfortunately, it had to happen in one of the most incompetent, half-baked projects this studio has ever produced, so when Echo inevitably crashes and burns, I worry that Marvel will learn the wrong lesson from that, think the audience doesn't want seriousness, and go right back to the everything has to be a joke bullshit that fans have been getting sick of for the last few years. So congratulations, writers. You had 3 things working in your favor, and in the span of just 5 episodes, you somehow managed to piss all of them away. I tell you not to quit your day jobs, but that's the only thing you should be doing right now. F you, f this show. Let's wrap this thing up. This was a joke, and the joke was on the audience. I find it really hard to believe that with all the reshoots they were doing, they couldn't cobble together anything better than this. All the money and resources at your disposal, and this was the best you could do? How did this even get greenlit in the first place? This show is so bad it doesn't deserve to exist. That anyone at Marvel Studios, which at one time had a great track record of producing banger content, thought Echo was even releasable in its current state is truly f***ing embarrassing. And it's not like you needed to see this to understand Daredevil Born Again. You don't. You could skip Echo entirely and go right into Born Again. You'll be fine. In fact, I encourage you to do that because the audience not having seen all the shit that goes down in Echo would improve Born Again's chances enormously. And that's what needed to happen here. Marvel should have just Batgirled this whole stupid project, got their tax write-off, and never thought of it again. Because they're not going to make any money off this, and the damage it's going to do to their brand, they don't need that shit. They've got enough damage control to do already. That's the call they should have made anyway, and at one time, maybe they would have been smart enough to do that. But sadly, Marvel Studios begins the new year the same way they ended the last one, as a pathetic, empty shell of the studio they used to be. 2024 is gonna be a bumpy ride, you guys. Buckle up. Thanks so much for watching. Apologies if the audio in this video sounded weird. I'm working with some new gear right now and we're having a few growing pains. I'm working on it. And while I do that, why don't you smash that bell icon and follow my social media so you can always be notified when I upload new stuff. The links are down there. And most importantly, don't forget to do all the other YouTube things. Hit that thumbs up, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Make sure you're still subscribed, and I'll be back with more real soon. Take care, stay tuned. I'll see you next time.